Hi everyone and welcome to Beyond Tomorrow, a new series from the New Zealand Herald in partnership with MYOB, where we tackle the unprecedented business environment affecting thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises across New Zealand, whilst the world battles to slow the spread of the novel coronavirus. I'm Will Trafford and every day I'm joined by Ingrid Cronin-Knight, MYOB's country manager. Hey Ingrid.
Hey Will, today, although the topic is probably more sobering than what we'd like in terms of how to wind down a business, but I think we can give business owners some real practicalities that they should consider if that's the route that they find themselves in.
Yeah, exactly. And at least we're in a safe pair of hands with Christine Johnson, a partner specialising in business services and insolvency at Nexia New Zealand. Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
No problems. More than happy to.
Righto, well, Ingrid, first up, let's just talk about some of the new data we've got. According to MYOB's March Business Monitor research, nearly 100% of all local SMEs are now predicting the economy will be worse or significantly worse in the next year. That's a level unseen in a decade of surveying. Despite all the government support, I guess it's make or break time for some businesses now, right?
We're in critical cash flow time for businesses, and although we've got some positive news around that, can open up and trade at level 3 without customer-facing interaction, and there's been no relief on their fixed costs in terms of rent or insurance. I think that, business owners are in for a really tough time. Having said that, some are really trading through it and actually expanding, but for those that are really struggling, then, it is really tough times.
I'm guessing, Christine, you're seeing a lot of this from sort of the coalface, if you would.
Look, absolutely. We're dealing daily with clients that are pretty distressed. Some are concerned about where they're at now. Some are particularly concerned about the future and what it looks like. But there's potentially some positives there as well. There's always opportunities in situations like this as well, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. And that's what we're encouraging our clients to do, whether the opportunities are within their own business or even looking at competitors' businesses or other industries or however it looks.
Yeah, Ingrid, we always talk about the underlying fundamentals, right? And that is going to be key in the discussion today when we're talking about things like insolvency, talking about liquidation, and I guess potentially for some people, bankruptcy.
Yeah, and look, I think the reality is that might be the outcome for some business owners. And, you think about it, can I meet my obligations? Or has the market shifted and demands changed in a fundamental way? Ultimately, we could get there. Now, there are some options for business owners. They could look at whether or not they could sell what they currently have and maximise whatever value they do have left in the assets that they have in the business. You could also look at whether or not you could, if you expand your business in different ways. If you're willing to take more risk, some people are doing that with the low cost of financing. You have people that you go and work with an accountant. They're trying to restructure the finance on the business to see if they can trade their way through it. Through to, can you pivot your business and actually just get down to the core essentials and then look at how you can provide complementary services on top of that. And then finally, actually, one of the results for some business owners will be insolvency and bankruptcy.
That's such a great point, eh? If you are just joining us and this is your first episode that you're watching us, you should know we've got tons of other episodes in the back catalogue now where we cover all of those sort of other options before you get to this point. If you're covering, potential pivots, looking at all the, your outgoings and all this kind of stuff and all the potential government support, go back and check the other episodes as well, because today we will get into the nitty gritty of maybe if you've sort of had to go beyond that point. Talking of going beyond that point, Christine, how do you sort of know, I guess, that the fundamentals underlying the business mean that basically it might be all over for you?
The cash position is normally what is the telling point. If you're at the position you just can't pay your bills on a weekly or monthly basis, then something's fundamentally wrong somewhere. And it could be fundamentally wrong because you're not trading very well, that you've got too much debt loading, that you're taking out too much of the good old drawings out for personal expenses. And it's just basically there's not enough cash coming in the door to meet the outgoings that have got to go out the other way.
And just on that, I guess, Ingrid, talking, we talk about these fundamentals all the time, right? The government has done some stuff to kind of help some businesses through that look like that they've got some potential to turn this around, as opposed to, their whole business model basically being sort of all over in the new economy. These safe harbour laws are a big one.
My understanding of the safe harbour laws, and we will have a specific episode when we get into the details of them, but it allows while trading in when insolvent provisions or your obligations under the Companies Act as a director, it looks to provide you some leniency to see whether or not you can actually find a way to trade through it over the course of the next 18 months. And I think it buys time so you're not making rash decisions because of the cash point right now, to really take a breath and think about, are there any other options that you could take, whether we're seeing like co-opetition and partnering, a whole heap of things that you're not actually making the rash decision without having it be well thought through.
Is this a big one, you think, for your clients potentially, Christine? If there's a solid underlying business there, but the accounts just aren't looking right?
Look, absolutely, there's potential there for clients, and like Ingrid says, it does potentially buy them a bit of time to, sort things out with creditors and have discussions. There's also the business debt hibernation rules as well that they've brought in, where you can go to your creditors and talk to them about proposal plans and the likes. But it will help to a degree to think about, can I save this business? Can I restructure? Get in front of your professional advisors. What can they do to help you? Can you cut the unprofitable bits off the bits that are, sucking the cash dry out of the business, as it were?
I think we're finding that everyone in this new working from home environment, if they have still been able to work from home, that they're finding that they're building up skills so they can actually lower cost bases across the board, whether that be how they're having meetings, whether that be from a property perspective. Even for startups, they don't need to be down in an accelerator hub. They can be in a really low cost provider. There's a whole heap of things that using digital technology and the skills that are coming out of this lockdown are making a difference, to see if you can trim that bloated fat that you've brought into your business over time.
Correct, and I think it's also giving business owners the actual opportunity to step back and have a look at their business and work really hard on it, which is what we've been encouraging our clients to do, because normally they're just so hard working in the business that they don't get to work on it, and this is actually the perfect opportunity for that.
Yeah, and Christine, I just want to highlight one of the other sort of government initiatives. Everyone knows about the 12-week sort of employee subsidy, but this notion of the debt guarantee by the government, in terms of injecting some more capital, is that something as well that could be a potential option, which wouldn't usually be on the table, but now given these extenuating circumstances, I guess it kind of is, and maybe it could prevent, insolvency, that kind of thing?
Look, absolutely. There is the opportunity there where the government is prepared to underwrite 80% of the debt. There are some conditions, obviously, that comes with that, as there is in everything in life. But look, it will buy some time again for some industries that, particularly businesses that were good businesses before this. If we look at the likes of hospitality, businesses that can't get up and running really quick, so they just need some help to get them through, say, the next couple of 3 months. But their cash flow will be high enough when they come back that they can repay that debt. And at least they've still got a feasible, tradable business out the other side of it. But it does need to be approached with caution, because you also don't want to take on more debt if things aren't going terribly well anyway.
Yeah, Christine, one of the notes that Ingrid and I have spoken about before is this sort of notion of deciding when to call it quits, and it might be a better idea to rip the Band-Aid off versus drag this thing out.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and that's when even we're dealing with companies, particularly that are in distress and are looking at liquidation options, that gets to the point that that's exactly what you've got to do. Sometimes the decision just needs to be made. The feedback we get from the directors once the decision is made is it's just one of relief, because the phone stops ringing. They're not getting abused by creditors that are desperate to be paid, staff members that don't know what's happening. The liquidator just takes all that off their shoulders. So it really is one of relief and almost the ability to move forward.
And Ingrid, the potential of generating some cash with the disposal of the assets, I suppose, as well, right? You've talked before about the fact that when we get out of level 4, potentially there might be a bit of a sort of peak in that pent-up demand that might be relieved, and maybe getting rid of some of those assets or getting rid of the business, even if someone's looking at acquiring your client base or something like that. maybe get in early and get it done, even if you're someone who's looking at, maybe retiring or something like that a bit earlier.
Yeah, look, we've had a lot of exposure to accountants and bookkeepers, and so professional services practices who, their nest egg was to sell their business, and they probably thought from a valuation perspective that they were going to get lots of multiples of money for it. I think in this environment that valuation will have reduced materially because there's a lot of uncertainty out of it. But I think explore those wider options, because you may have something that's of value to other people, and all your obligations are still there. But if you can trade not only the goods and the inventory that you might have, but there might be some sort of client base, a set that you've got value in that you can trade to another person. And it might not be a multiples of EBITDA or multiples of revenue. It might be a 30 cents on the dollar kind of thing. But at least if you explore that option and get out into the network and see if it's of interest to anyone, you might find that there are some other ways that you can navigate your way.
Christine, I wonder if you can sort of talk us through the process of perhaps, either route, the bankruptcy route, depending on what type of business you're operating, or liquidation, and maybe the importance of bringing in that consultant, that person that looks at the situation a bit more devoid of emotion potentially, because we know that that's a big thing in some of these small businesses.
Oh, look, that's exactly right. I mean, these, people's businesses are their babies. They've poured their heart and their soul and their life into it. Often their relationship, they haven't watched the kids grow up and that sort of stuff. So it's really hard. But it shouldn't necessarily be your first port of call that I'm going to go into liquidation. You need to seek that really good advice, and do it early. And don't be embarrassed or ashamed to have to seek it. If you haven't got professional advisors that you can ring up and just have the conversation with, you've got the wrong professional advisors. You really need somebody that you can trust, have the discussion, and that will give you the good, honest responses that you're looking for. So, pick it up by its ankles, give it a good shake. What falls out? What can we do differently? How does it work? If when you have gone through that and there still looks to be no hope and the writing's on the wall, then that's when the decision has to be made. So bankruptcy, that applies to individuals or partners in a partnership. So if you trade as a sole trader, then it's a bankruptcy route. If, however, you are a company or that you go into liquidation, or if you've got secured creditors receivership, but we won't go down there today because it's too hard. So you first make the decision, but again, if you have to go into a liquidation, so you need to talk to a liquidator beforehand, because the timing of it is really, really important, and you really need to do that. Even if you think you've got a buyer for the business or the assets, if you think you are not going to be able to clear all your bills out the other end of it, you need to talk to a liquidator before you start liquidation proceedings. The reason being is often there are what we call interested parties, so banks and other secured creditors. So they might, if you're a digger driver, they've likely got security over your digger. You can't just go and sell that out from underneath them.
Hey, Christine, that's really practical advice. What are the risks and personal liabilities that you've got to consider as you explore either bankruptcy or liquidation?
So obviously there is consequences on you personally with both. Bankruptcy, very much so, but even as a director of a company that has been trading what we call recklessly, can open you up to liability as well. And also business owners have got to be aware that 9 times out of 10 that their business debt is actually secured against their family home. So of course, all of a sudden, if you can't pay your business debt, the bank wants your house, or you're going to talk to your bank about the fact that they're going to want your house to repay their business debt. It's also not uncommon in company liquidation situations to see directors wittingly or unwittingly, and also shareholders, so that's often where your partner is bought into it, have given personal guarantees on trade accounts. So if you're a builder and you deal with Mitre 10, when you opened your trade account and you didn't read the small print, you were probably giving them personal guarantees. So what that means is all of a sudden your business creditors have got access into your private assets. So that is often why you see that directors and shareholders of companies that go into liquidation then end up being bankrupted in their personal names as well. So it is really, really important to be very, very aware of that. There's also some very significant consequences if you have got unpaid PAYE or employer deductions, so KiwiSaver and the likes. and GST debt owing to the IRD as well. The IRD can actually have you charged criminally for that, and you will read every now and again in the newspaper that a high-profile businessman is going through the court system for unpaid company tax liabilities.
Wow. And what does it mean personally if you go bankrupt? What's the implication of that?
So bankruptcy, that's dealt with the official S&E, so it's a government department. And so basically it's the same thing. What they do is they take within reason your assets to satisfy the debts owing to your creditors. So it's under both scenarios, whether it's bankruptcy or liquidation, there's a very prescribed format and way in which people get their money back. Normally it's the mortgage holder. If it's a personal one, your house will have a mortgage over it, so the bank obviously gets first port of call on the equity in your house. And then it goes backwards from there. If you've got a car that's on finance, then the finance company will likely get the car. So, I mean, they can't take everything from you in bankruptcy. They're not going to come in and take your fridge, freezer and your couch. They're possibly not going to take your 1978 Toyota Corolla, but if you've got a brand new Maserati parked in the driveway, they're probably going to look pretty closely at that. So there is some significant consequences. Bankruptcy lasts for 3 years. In that time, there's restrictions on obviously starting businesses and getting credit and the likes. And you will spend most of the rest of your life on credit applications saying that you have at some point been bankrupt.
In terms of the emotional, mental, and well-being of people as they go through that process, as you said, it's their baby. They've nurtured it. They've grown it. It feels like it's them in their identity in some ways. Is there any? I know that you're a sort of an advisor, but do you have to coach people through the separating of this is their own identity or value as a person as distinctly different from the business?
Yeah, look, absolutely we do, because it's at the end of the day, it's your business. So, and you don't want to see it fail. And so nobody does. So we spend a lot of time on both ends of it. So whether it's, a business that's in trouble and we're trying to restructure and get them out of it, or, the end is nigh and look, we're going to have to push the go button on a liquidation. We're with them the whole time. We're working with them. And, there's at times there's a lot of tears and there's a lot of distress, but you've got to have that support network around you. And it's not just your professionals, it's your friends. You need to be open and honest with your partner. We often see that they're not, and once those communications can be opened a wee bit more, the relief again is that much easier.
And if you do go down that bankruptcy route, are there any implications, because you just started talking about the family home, but are there implications for potentially your partner through that process?
Look, if there's a mortgage over the family home, it would normally be in joint names. So if the mortgage is in joint names, then yes, absolutely, the family home is going to go. I have seen it through a liquidation process more so, where we have successfully managed to hive off half the equity in the family home for the partner. But again, in a bankruptcy mortgage situation, that's not very common because it is the house that's securing the whole thing. So yeah, it is tricky. That's when the partner comes in, and often you see it, the partner really didn't understand the documents they were signing at the time, and they didn't understand the consequence. And so again, it's that really good professional advice right from the outset. What am I signing? Do I understand it? What is the consequence?
That's what I was about to ask you, Christine. If you're one of these partners that are potentially, they've countersigned loans, they've, been listed as a director at the company's office, that kind of thing, what should you do if you have an inkling that maybe your partner's in deeper than they're letting on?
Look, absolutely. The first thing, and we've seen a couple of cases around this in sort of recent years, is if you're not actively involved in the day-to-day running of the business, I would strongly suggest you are not a director. And it's just around that liability space. And it's very common in husband and wife businesses that they are both directors, but one is often far more active in the day-to-day running of the business than the other. So in that instance, you can both be shareholders, you can still have ownership in it, but only one of them should be listed as the director. And that just helps to mitigate that liability and that risk as well. But look, there's been times, it's just my accounting side of my business where, we'll get the significant other on the phone going, hey, you know what, something's up here, I need you to talk me through it. And sometimes you do. You just need to bring everybody into a room and step them through it. If you get stepped through it and you still don't understand it, you need to ask the question. It's not that you're not understanding it, it's that they're not explaining it properly. So you've got to take them back and get them to do it again.
Who should we essentially go to and speak to if we're looking at this scenario now? There will be a lot of people, presumably, in this scenario having never imagined they would have been.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, start with your professional advisors. So your current accountant, your current lawyer, your bank manager. Some of the most powerful meetings that I have with my clients is when we get the bank manager, the lawyer, the accountant and the clients in the room around the same table together. Obviously at the moment that might be a wee bit tricky. Do it on Zoom, do it on FaceTime, however you need to do it. Get them round, lay it bare. This is what I've done, this is what I've considered, this is what I think it looks like. Has anybody got anything to add? Can anybody make 4 and 4 into 6 right now, or 12, or whatever you need it to be? If that doesn't work, if you think that your accountant might be out of their depth, or their lawyer or their banker, then you need to find some specialist advice. And hopefully if they agree with you that, look, you've exhausted all of your avenues, the writing is on the wall, so therefore we now need to make the next decision, then they need to go to a specialist insolvency practitioner to get that assistance and that advice.
Christine, I wonder if, again, someone is looking at this scenario and having, some real issues with digesting the reality of what's about to happen. Can you give me potentially some things that these advisors might come up with to get them out of this scenario that might offer some relief? These advisors are obviously going to understand the new tax changes better than a lot of business leaders. They're going to understand a lot, negotiating with creditors, all this different kind of stuff, I guess, that maybe the business owner who's looking purely at numbers is going, nothing here adds up.
No, exactly right. This doesn't work. Look, and I think the angle and what use the current government assistance is going to be is actually how good the underlying business is. And we've already seen some big names that have got into trouble that have already had headlines sort of a fortnight into the shutdown. The reality is it's probably not the shutdown that's done it. They were probably in trouble beforehand. And so that's why I think you've got to do that backward step and actually look at the business as a whole and go, right, where are we at? What does it look like? What does it look like going forward? What do we anticipate our industry is going to do? Have I got a viable underlying business? Yes, I have. Right, so it's a cash flow issue. What do I do with the cash? Is it my debtors? Have I got too much stock on hand? Am I taking too many drawings out? Do I need to restructure my staff and let some of them go? Do I need to get rid of some parts of the business that are no longer trading profitably and are actually holding the rest of them back? Is there excess assets that I can sell, again, to free up that cash? You need the good, plug for MYOB. You've got to have, a good accounting system. Do you know what's happening on a monthly basis? If not, you need to. It's all that good stuff. Is that real cash flow management, the budget going forward? What does it look like? How do we change this? You've got to watch it and just keep changing and keep being aware of what's happening around you all the time.
Ingrid, where do we go and get someone like Christine to help us out? Because crikey, she is a woman you want on your team, I'm guessing.
Next year in Christchurch, obviously, is where you go to get Christine. But I think Christine said it before, that the best place is to start with your financial advisors, start with your accountant, start with your lawyer, and if you can, your banker. And that will be a great place to start. The reality is if you got to this point, there are extenuating circumstances on the current economic environment. And it doesn't mean, although this process is going to be very challenging for you and potentially your partners, your staff, those people that are going to go through this process with you, that you have grown and thrived a business over time, and the assets and the skills and the knowledge that you've learnt through that process mean that you can really make a difference for New Zealand as we trade and navigate our way out of this process. And so I think that although this is a terrible place to be, you as a business owner have incredible assets and skills that can really make a difference, and don't lose sight of that.
We say it again and again and again, right? This is not a personal failure. People didn't cause this. People didn't inject this economic environment into their business. It really, unfortunately, is what it is. And for so many business leaders, by nature they lead, and it will still be so hard for them, I guess, to struggle with that notion. But the truth is, this is far beyond what any business leader in many situations will be able to navigate. Christine Johnston, thank you so much. I mean, such a wealth of information there, and scraps of optimism within a really negative and overwhelmingly sad, I guess, topic for so many people. And Ingrid Cronin-Knight, MYOB's country manager, thank you so much for being with us. Again, remember, to you at home, we want to hear your questions. Email them through to video@nzherald.co.nz. Plenty more episodes to come where we can address those. Until next time, stay home, stay safe. Bye for now.